The topic of today's session is code review. We are going to be talking a little bit about the benefits of collaborative code development and how collaboration can improve the quality and effectiveness of our code. This is a brief overview of the session. So the session will start with the introduction to the topic for about 15 minutes. We will be talking about benefits of collaborative code development. And then we are going to move on into the practical activity, where we are going to be putting some of the theory that we learn in introduction into practice, and we are going to be practicing using a code review workflow in GitHub. We have a shared Google Notes document for today. I'm just going briefly to switch to it. And I'm sure you already have that in the chat, the link to this document. If you can sign in, please, for us, so we can keep an eye on numbers. You've got some important links or useful links at the top. You can come back to this document. This document will remain available to you. You can take your notes here. We might use this document to pass some notes to you. But in any case, you can bookmark it. And if you ever want to revisit anything that we've done, or you want to revisit some of the links to the sessions or the materials or the slides, please come back to this document. Unfortunately, because we have very limited time in this session, we won't have any time for troubleshooting, setup problems, or installation issues. You had the setup installations emailed to you ahead of this session, and you should have done and completed the setup before coming today. Okay, so let's have a quick look at code review. So why do we want to do code review? What are the benefits of doing code review? And what is code review to begin with? So as you might know, software development is a collaborative endeavor, and research itself is collaborative endeavor. So even when much of the coding you do is done individually, you might benefit by getting input from your colleagues, someone else having a look at your code. It might impact the quality or maintainability or effectiveness of your work. And it might not actually require a big investment of time, because there is typically no single way to solve a problem or a perfect way to solve a problem. Working with others might allow you to share your knowledge, skills, and ideas and experiences with others, but likewise get other people's input, ideas, experiences, different perspectives, leading to better solutions in your code and also to new insight. Through collaboration, we can all learn new techniques, we can learn new tools or infrastructures that can help us with streamlining the development, and also helping build us a shared understanding that can help our software development process or our research as a whole. So what are the benefits of code review as a process? Well, it will help us catch bugs earlier, because someone else will look in the code. It can improve our code readability, because someone else will read our code, give some feedback to us as to whether they can understand what it is that we are trying to do. And in general, it will increase the overall code quality. It also fosters shared ownership of the code base among team, making it easier for teams to either maintain or to extend the code over time, because there is no single person that owns the whole code base or knows the whole code base, which is really important, especially for bigger software projects. Okay, so something to remember is it's probably best to adopt these collaborative tools and practices before they become urgent, before you get into a difficulty, and then you have to employ these tools and practices on the fly. So really setting yourself up with the processing, with the code sharing and collaboration platforms and workflows will really help you be ready to handle any conflicts or any problems that might come up in the future. So what kind of collaborative coding practices we know? Well, to start with, you can use shared code repositories just by sharing your code and adding your colleagues and enabling them to look into your code without actually employing any formal code review techniques is a big step towards improving your code. But then we can have some more or less formal code review techniques. So we can do things like pair programming with our colleagues, where you have two people sitting at the computer, where one person codes in real time and the other person looks and makes some comments as the code is being developed. You can have things like over-the-shoulder review, where one person perhaps has implemented something, but then wants to get some feedback on what they've done, and they take through their colleague through the changes that they've made, and then the colleague comments on it. Differs from pair programming because it doesn't happen at the same time as the code is being developed. It happens after the fact. There are also tool-assisted code reviews. So this is something that we will be practicing today. So using tools that, for example, are afforded to us, but by code sharing platforms. So, for example, pull requests in GitHub, which enable us to formally get someone to review and comment on our code before it gets merged into the main branch of our development. Okay, so what is actually code review? Code review is the process of examining and discussing someone else's code with the goal of checking its correctness and improving its quality and readability at the point where we introduce the code changes. So it's really key to have this code review early in the process to help us identify bugs and to identify conformance with the coding standards, and also to support sharing knowledge across the team. So why would you do this? Code reviews are valuable at any stage of the software development lifecycle, but the earlier you start doing code review, you will reap higher benefits. So we've got some actual numbers to highlight this. So Michael Fagan, who is the author of the formal code inspection technique, says that rigorous inspections can remove 60 to 90% of errors from the code even before the first tests are run. So by having someone look at the code, even before you run the code or run the tests, can identify quite a lot of errors there. And also cost to remedy a defect in the early, say, design stage is about 10 to 100 times less compared to fixing the same defect in development or maintenance or production stages, respectively. So hopefully these numbers convince you that it's really good to use code review, and it's really good to start using it as soon as possible. Okay, so a couple of code review types. I've mentioned a few informal ones. So even emailing your code to colleagues and getting them to have a look at it is a type of code review. And this is what happened in the past, because before we had all these tools and code sharing platforms. And this was quite a valid way to have a look, to have code review done. We thankfully have some other tools to help us with the process, to make the process faster and more streamlined. So we don't really email code to colleagues anymore, but it is a technique. I mentioned over-the-shoulder code review, and I mentioned pair programming already, but there are more formal code review techniques as well. So, for example, I mentioned Fagan's code inspection, which is a highly structured code base review, where a team of developers examines the code base systematically. There are strict criteria how you can test and identify defects, and you ensure that you conform to standards. So this is a highly effective technique, but it's quite resource intensive and perhaps less common in research software community, but it does occur. There are other code review types that we more commonly use when we develop research code, and one of them is code modification and contribution-based review. So this kind of code review occurs when changes are additions to a code base are reviewed as they are being introduced. So they are typically tool assisted. An example of this technique are GitHub's pull requests, where you don't merge your changes directly into your code base until someone else from the team has a look at those changes and approves them. So you create a pull request instead of merging your changes directly. Someone else has a look at your changes, does a review, give you some comments, you pass comments back and forth, you modify the code based on the comments, and then when both you and your reviewer are happy, you merge your changes into the code base. Obviously, make sure that the code is correct, that passes all the tests and so on. Okay, so a couple of good practices when doing code reviews. So first thing to highlight is that actually the first hour of review is the most critical and the most productive, with diminishing returns thereafter. So what does that mean? That means if you spend 3 hours on reviewing someone else's code, you're going to get smaller benefits than spending, for example, just 1 hour or half an hour looking at someone else's code. So you need to strike a practical balance between spending hours and hours reviewing someone else's code, but also investing enough time to offer some useful and actionable feedback without turning these reviews into a bottleneck for your software development team. So a couple of do's and don'ts when doing code review as a reviewer. So yes, you should focus on code quality. Is the code clear? Is it readable? When someone introduces a function, does it serve a single purpose, or are they mixing a couple of units of functionality within one function? Is it well structured? Is the code consistent with the rest of the project? Things like that. Are tests included? Are documentation included? Are they up to date with the latest changes? Is the project's coding style followed overall? Typically, if you're using tools like linters, which we've covered last week, you don't have to check for the coding style formally, because there will be tools to check for that. But yes, you can highlight if something is not being followed. You should also check for duplicating existing functionality. Is there the same functionality somewhere else in the code? Is there the functionality provided by a third-party library? Are we re-implementing something that we shouldn't be really re-implemented? Is the change only limited to what's required by the issue or the ticket that the change is addressing? And then also, for example, you should be asking questions. Don't assume that you know everything or that you understand what the code does or that you know best. Ask the code author what they meant and then offer respectful and specific feedback. So these are a couple of do's. In terms of don'ts, you probably shouldn't be spending loads of time on linting or style issues, especially if you've got automated tools or CI pipelines that will catch these. Don't spend your time nitpicking or hunting bugs unless something clearly looks wrong. Instead of doing that, check that tests exist for various test cases and edge cases that should catch these bugs. Don't try to fix unrelated legacy issues that predate this change. If you identify some of these, you should log those separately to avoid scope creep and making this change bigger than it should be. Avoid doing architecture overhauls when you're doing a code review. So if you want to address some big picture change or some architectural change, this is probably addressed at the design meetings or team discussions or dedicated meetings to decide whether the code should be re-architected. And also avoid refactoring everything. So if you get some code from someone and you think, oh, I will do this differently, avoid refactoring their code. Provide only a few critical suggestions and aim maybe for incremental improvement rather than the complete refactor, and not perfection, because perfect is the enemy of the good. You should focus on what's the best for the team and what will make you move forward. Okay, so with that, we are going to go into the practical activity where you're going to get to practice code review with GitHub's pull requests. And I'm going to hand you over to Steve to take you through the practical activity.
Thank you, Alex, for that great introduction. Right, okay, so I'm just going to organize my screen. This might take a little while, apologies for that. Okay. Right, let's see, make sure I've got all my windows. Right, okay, yes, so the practical activity. So let's see what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to let you have a go at this yourself. So hopefully it should be a bit of fun. Might be a bit of a challenge, we'll see. But either way, I think it's going to be fun for everyone. So if you're at the intermediate Git Byte-sized RSE session last week on Thursday, this activity follows on from that in a way with the use of pull requests, but focuses on the code review aspect of that process. You may remember we went through the process of creating a pull request, showing you how you do that, from adding commits to a branch. This is going to be similar, but follows the other side of that as well, which is basically creating the pull request and then getting someone else to review it for us, okay? So the aim is to give you experience of doing a code review, albeit briefly. You can then consider how, when, and how best to use pull requests and code reviews in your own work with your colleagues, in your local teams or across your projects. But also that means that you'll be familiar with pull requests and code reviews more when you come across them in the wild and know then how to handle them. So you'll gain some practical experience of code review from two perspectives. As the contributor, as a contributor, you'll be contributing changes via a PR and having someone else review your change. Oh, just trying to sort out my windows a bit more. There we go. And then as a reviewer, you'll be reviewing someone else's pull request. So I'm going to be demonstrating this via live coding. So I'm going to be showing my screen, presenting a demonstration, and you're free to follow along with me if you wish. As we've mentioned in the email we sent to you, you'll need a GitHub account of your own. So to save us some time later, if you can sign into your GitHub account now in a browser, if you haven't already, that would be really great. Thank you. We're also going to be providing an existing code repository for you to use for this activity that contains some code that we'll be using for this. So as a quick question, using the Zoom reactions, you see the little reactions icon at the bottom of Zoom there. If you could give us a green tick if you are wanting to participate in the live coding activity, and if not, feel free to put a red cross, please. Thank you. And of course, you don't have to. You can just, just see how all this turns out, use it as a demonstration. But if you are wanting to participate, if you let us know, that gives me a baseline for numbers, so we know roughly how many are going to be in it. Okay, right. So good. All right. So thank you very much for that. So so just to note, this live coding activity is really just a taster. There's always going to be more to learn. We've provided a Google Doc with links to further information and guides for learning more. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we'll likely be unable to solve any in-depth technical issues you may have. But if you do run into issues, feel free to put your issue into the chat and we'll see what we can do to resolve it in that way. But even if we can't resolve it, hopefully even as a demonstration, it'll still give you a taster of how code reviews are useful and how you can make use of them. So what are we going to cover in the activity? So we're firstly going to make a copy of an example template GitHub repository in our own GitHub account. So the repository contains a single main branch with some example Python code. For the purposes of the activity, it could be absolutely anything. We're only going to use it for illustrative purposes. We won't need to run the code or anything like that. I should point out this is a common repository we use in training sessions to demonstrate how to improve things. And so the quality of the code isn't terrifically good, quite deliberately, I assure you. So just bear that in mind if you do decide to take a look under the hood. So once we've created our repository from the template, we'll then add an issue to GitHub. And this is going to represent some work that needs to happen in our code base, some change we need to make. And then what we'll do is once we've created the issue, we'll then create a fix in response to that issue. And then we'll use the GitHub editor to do this for simplicity. So as opposed to doing this on the command line, what we're going to do just for simplicity in this training session, we're going to use the GitHub interface to make this change. Although in practice, you know, what you may have decided to do instead would be to clone this to your machine, make the change there, and then push that up to your repository. That would have been another way of doing it. So yes, and once we've done that, we're going to submit this fix as a pull request on our new repository, okay, waiting for someone to review. Next, what we'll do, and this bit should be interesting, we're going to exchange our GitHub account usernames with someone else, right? So we're going to add our own GitHub username to a shared Google Doc, so someone else can invite us to review their pull request. And conversely, also from that Google Doc, we'll claim one of the other participants' usernames so we can invite them to review our pull request using GitHub. So as a reviewer, we're going to write our own review of the other participants' pull request and submit that review. And then finally, as a contributor, we'll read the other participants' review of our pull request when they've submitted it and merge our pull request into our repository. That may sound a little bit complex, but hopefully as we go through the process, hopefully it'll become a little clearer. Okay. Right, so with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change things around a bit. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we need to create a copy of our example code repository. So I'm going to put the link to that into the chat. You can also find it in the, oh, my chat's just disappeared. Sometimes I don't like seeing, I have to say. Right, okay, let's try that. Okay, so if you go to the GitHub repository that I've copied into the chat there, what you should find is you see something that looks a bit like this. So what I'd like you to do is, once you have that open, is to click use that template, which is ordinarily over there like this, and select create a new repository. Okay. And this is effectively going to create a copy of this repository in our account. Now, once we've done that, we can then enter a repository name, and I'm going to basically call it the same thing. So I'm just going to call it review example, like this. And once I've done that, I'm going to select create repository, making sure it doesn't really matter. In this case, yes, it does matter actually in this case. We do need to make sure that our repository is public, okay? If we're going to want someone else to do to review our pull request. So for that to happen, this repository needs to be public. So once you've done that and you have typed in a repository name that you can remember, feel free to click on create repository. Someone's mentioned they don't see a template button. So that's an interesting one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back. So you should see it in the top right. You'll need to make sure that you're logged into GitHub. I don't know if that's an issue. Refreshed and then you saw it. Like magic, it appears. I don't know why that was. Maybe it was some kind of rendering issue. I don't know, but it's good you've got that sorted. So, okay, so once you've done that, type in review-example, make sure it's public, and then select create repository, like this. It'll go away, create a copy of that repository in your own account, and you should see something that looks like this. Okay, so ordinarily what we would do, what we've done before at least in these bite-sized RSE sessions, is we've cloned this repository onto our machines. We're going to use the GitHub website interface to edit some contents of this repository, so there's no need to do that. Okay, so right. Now, the repository contains code written in Python that's used to analyze a data set from the UK Research Fish Publications database. For the purposes of the training, we're going to use a repository to make some high-level commits create a pull request for review. So we don't need to delve any deeper into how it works, but know that the repository contents have been modified, as I've said, to deliberately include quite a few errors. That gives us a rich training ground from which to select an error to fix. Okay, so if you've managed to create a template of that repository, if you could give us a green tick for yes or a red tick for no, that would be really good. Thank you very much. Okay, all right, so that's looking good. Thank you very much for that. Right, so let's move on. So what we need to do now is we need to create some work for ourselves. Okay, so the usual process of making a change to a repository is you have an issue on a repository which represents something that needs to change. This is established best practice. So there's a change that needs to be made, and it's described in an issue. And then what you do is you make commits, and those commits reference the issue in the meaning that it needs to. The idea is that that fix is designed to fix that issue to some extent. And then once we've done that, we then create a pull request that can be reviewed. So let's do the first step of that, which is to add an issue to our repository so we can follow this established best practice of fixing things in response to an issue. So, right. So it doesn't really matter in this case what the issue is, but perhaps we've spotted a problem with our code base during development, and we need to make sure, we need to note this problem needs to be fixed, okay? So if we look at the README, right, if you scroll down, you'll notice there's a link here that sits in the README, Research Fish, what it can tell us about software and research. And if we click that, you will notice that the page has not been found, okay? And as it turns out, there's literally the word typo sitting in the URL. So it's probably not going to work. Okay, so there's something there that definitely needs to be fixed. So what we'll do is we'll add an issue for this, and the way we'll do that is we'll click on issues here at the top of our code repository. And once we've clicked on issues, we'll click on new issue. Okay, give you a second to do that. Okay, so now we need to type in something that's going to represent the work that needs to be done. So what we'll do is we'll add a title, which will be broken link to article. So importantly, the issue does not describe the fix, it describes the problem. So we're just basically putting in what the problem is. There's a broken link to article in README. Okay, okay, right. Now, in the description, let's add something that looks a bit like the README link to the SSI website article, and you can write anything you like or nothing at all here if you like. Is broken, resulting in a page not found error. So this is a little concise, but it gets the main points across. It basically mentions the only link that's in the README and mentions the problem precisely as to what happened. So in this case, you click on it, you get a page not found error. And this is enough for someone else to duplicate that issue. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll assign ourselves to the issue by selecting assign yourself. So at the top right, you'll see assignees. We're just going to assign ourselves to that. And as befits good practice, we also should classify what kind of issue this is. And this is technically documentation. So if I click on labels and then click documentation, if you find that scrolling off the bottom for whatever reason, you can type it in here like doc, and you should see it pop up there. We just click on it and you should see a blue tick box there, and you should find it's there. So we've got a label, we've assigned ourselves, and we've put in a description and a title. So once you've done that, if you could give us a green tick. So this bit's a little bit pedestrian. We'll get to the interesting bits later. But okay, right, excellent. So you are on the ball. Excellent. Thank you for that. So what we'll do now is create that issue. So if you click on create, you should find we have a nice issue number 1 sitting there. Okay. Now let's assume that at some future date we've decided to fix the issue, and that time is, as it turns out, 30 seconds after we've created the issue. Now, in most cases, we'll probably do this by having the repository cloned on our machine, as we said, that we'd make the change and submit it that way. But just for the interest of time and efficiency, we'll just use GitHub's direct file editing feature, which means that we can edit the file directly and commit it that way. So what we'll do is we'll go to the repository's main page. So just click on the repository name at the top there. I'm going to navigate to the README file. So you'll see it's the second entry in the listing of files. So if you click on that, right? Okay. And then I'd like you to select the edit icon. It's a little pen/pencil icon that says edit this file if you hover over it. And if you click on that in the file editor, I'd then, once you clicked on that, is to, in the file editor, just edit out the typo and a / there. Okay. So just make that a little bigger so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. So typo and / is literally the typo we need to remove. So I'm going to remove that. Okay. Right. So who's been able to do that? If you could give me a green tick, just to check that you're managing to follow. If you're having problems, let us know in the chat. That would be great. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. So we've made the fix to the file, and now what we need to do is to commit that to our repository. So let's do that now. Now, it's good practice when committing a change to refer to the issue number in the commit message, which will give us traceability for changes back to the originating issue. We're looking at the commits in a repository. The other really cool thing is if we do a commit and mention the issue number, if we go to the issue, we will see the commits related to that particular issue, which is really handy. So we can see the work that's being conducted on an issue as it's actually ongoing, and GitHub gives us that for free. So let's do that. So what we'll do is we're going to click on commit changes in the top right. So this is the first issue on the repository, as we know. So we know it's issue number 1. So I'm going to put #1 fix broken article link, and that's for example, that's one way we could reference that issue. I've decided to do that because that's what I typically do. But you might have a different convention within your own teams or your own research groups. But I'll put that in there for now. We could optionally put more info in about the fix in the description if we really wanted to, perhaps describing how we fixed it, anything that anyone else needed to know when reviewing this fix potentially. But let's not worry about that for now. So now, importantly, we want to submit the change as a pull request, but we need to do that on a new branch, since this will allow others to review that pull request. Okay, so as we saw last Thursday, for those of you that were there for that session, we were creating a new branch, adding commit to that branch and submitting that as a pull request. Okay, we're going to do exactly the same here, but using the GitHub interface. Okay, so to do that, what we do is we select create a new branch for this commit and start a pull request, and GitHub will do this process for us. Okay, so it says Steve Crouch patch 1, which isn't particularly descriptive, so I'm going to change that to be something like, so it's a branch, so I'm going to give it 1 as the issue number, and then put in readme broken link fix. A little bit verbose, perhaps. Feel free to add anything you like. Okay, so once you've got to that state, if you could give me a green tick, that would be absolutely fantastic. See who's managed to get to that point. Okay, great. Okay, you're just about keeping up with me. Thank you for that. So once you've done that, click on Propose Changes. Okay, so that's a new branch that's been created, and that one single commit has been put onto that branch that's linked back to our issue. Okay, so now we're presented with an open a pull request screen. So we just need to effectively create that pull request. Okay, so let's think about this in a real situation. We've done some work. We've committed that work to a separate branch, whether it was on the command line or using the GitHub interface. And now we want someone else to be able to look at that and give us an idea of what they think of our changes. And so the mechanism for that is a pull request on GitHub. So let's create one of those now. And as I've said, the interface has pulled us into this screen which has open a pull request, and that enables us to create it here. So right. So just to check, has everyone landed at this screen, open a pull request? Because I've noticed that sometimes it depends on how people have committed it. And I just want to be sure that they've got to that state. If you haven't, if you go to pull requests, this is the other way you can do this. So for those of you that are already there, that's fine. The other way you can do it is you can go to pull requests, go to new pull request, and then once you've done that, you can go to the compare box and select our new branch, one readme broken link fix. and then click on Create Pull Request. Okay, that's the other way you can do that. So if you're having problems with that, please feel free to give us a red X and I'll go through the process again, or you can put your issue into the chat, okay? Right, okay, so we've got to this point. So we need to make sure that our compare part of this is the branch that we've put our commit onto, and our base is the main, since what we want to do is propose these changes that are on this branch so they can be merged into the main branch, okay? And it tells us handily that it's able to merge. It can be done even automatically at this point. We don't want to do that just yet, so we want it to be reviewed first, okay? So, right, so once we've done that, we'll select, we could add more into the description if we really wanted to. Okay. Also, if we scroll down, you'll notice we have our single commit there on our branch and a summary of the changes. Okay. So let's click on Create Pull Request. All right. So who's been able to create that pull request successfully? If you have, green tick. If not, give us a red X to give us an idea of how that's going. Any issues, please feel free to put that into the chat. Okay. Right, okay. So then you should see a summary of the pull request, including a summary of any conflicts with the base main branch, which there should be none, okay, which is great. There's also an option to merge the pull request, but please don't do that just yet. We need to get it reviewed first. Interestingly, even though we have created this PR to do a merge, we could continue developing our code on this new branch indefinitely if we wanted. We could wait for review, keep on making new commits to this branch, which would show up here, and then merge at a future date, perhaps asking for another review at a later stage. And this will be particularly useful if we needed to have a longer discussion about the PR as it's developing. And the discussion will be captured in the comments for this PR. And when ready, we can merge that PR. And the great thing is within the PR, then we have a conversation about everything that's been discussed regarding those changes and any other changes that have needed to be made. A common question I've been asked is how long should PRs be open? How long should pull requests be open? And this is an interesting question because if you've got a branch that's been stuck around for a while, how long should it really exist? And to some degree, this depends on the nature of the changes that you're making. Branches in Git are designed and should be whenever possible, as short-lived as you can make them. And there's a good reason for that. So if you're making lots of changes and adding them to a branch over a long period of time, it could be that the main branch has deviated substantially because of other changes that have been made. So once that branch that you're working on is finally ready, when you come to merge it, you get all kinds of conflicts. Okay, so generally it's a good idea to keep your branches open for a relatively short period of time. You know, in this case, you make a fix, you get it reviewed, and you merge it, and you do that relatively quickly. So, you know, a good rule of thumb is perhaps a few days, maximum maybe of a week. It depends on how many changes are being made on a daily basis to your code base, of course. But do it relatively quickly. Don't keep them open too long. The other problem, of course, is that you can end up with loads of many different branches, and people forget what they're all for and the context of each of those branches, and that can be a little difficult to clean up sometimes. Right, okay. So once we've created it, note that we can look at all pull requests on our repository by clicking on the pull requests tab at the top. And here we can see our single pull request. Okay. So now this is going to be the interesting bit. So what we need to do is we need to swap our GitHub account usernames with another participant, with the idea being that we can then invite them to review our PR. And then we need to get hold of another's GitHub account username so that we can invite, hang on. Yes, we need to get hold of another GitHub account username so we can invite them to review our PR and allow them to get hold of someone else to get hold of our account username so they can request us to review their PR. Okay, so we're going to review someone else's PR and someone else will review ours. Okay, so this is going to be interesting. Okay, so I can see that people are already putting in their GitHub account username. They've been reading ahead of the script. So if you could go to the shared document, please, that we shared at the start, perhaps Aman, if you could, or Alex, if you could share the link to the docs. Thank you, Aman, brilliant. So you will notice there are two columns. your GitHub account username. You've already got the process. This is okay. You've been reading ahead, definitely. This is really, really good. You guys are really on the ball today. Put in your GitHub account username. Make sure it's correct, please. And then decide on someone else's GitHub username that you will effectively claim to review their PR. And we need as much as a one-to-one link there, pairwise as possible. Okay. So don't, go in and review 2 or 3, just one. Okay. But make sure you add in your GitHub account username. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. This was actually, I thought this was going to be the hardest part of this session. And you guys seem to be on really, really going great guns on this. So well done. Okay, right. So yes, excellent. It might get a little tricky towards the end as we try and work out the final allocations there for who gets to review what. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16. Okay, so we've got another. So, yeah. Okay, so that's 16. So that's an even number. That's good. That means that everyone should be able to claim someone else's. Okay, so I see there are still two spaces left there. For those of you that haven't yet claimed another username, if you put your name into the. Okay, all right. So excellent. I think that's it. I think that is each of those columns is mutually exclusive. Doesn't have any duplicates as far as I can see. Aman, or Alex, if you can see a duplicate in the second column particularly, let me know. Okay. Right. Okay. Brilliant. I can't believe how quickly you guys did that. That's just astonishing. Well done. Okay. So, right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to need to add our collaborator who will do the review of our PR as a repository collaborator. Okay. So what I want you to do is where you have your account username in the first column, right? Get hold of the corresponding username of the person in the second column that's next to yours. Okay. All right. Right. Okay. So I'll keep that there. And I think what I'll do. Okay. So I'm just going to move this over here for now. Oh, where'd that go? Okay. Right, so I've got a username that I'm going to use, which is just a backup username, another GitHub account, basically, just to demonstrate. So what you need to do is go to your pull request. So I'll click on pull requests, go to, oh, no, sorry, I beg your pardon. What we need to do is we need to add them as a collaborator to our repository. So think of this person as a colleague with whom you want to collaborate with on a piece of code, and they're going to review your code. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to go to settings on your repository. So review example, click on settings. Okay, then click on collaborators. Okay, it's top of the list there under access. Now, this is the slightly annoying bit. You may find if you've got multi-factor authentication set up that you need to go through this process. So I'm just going to run GitHub. .65. Okay, so there we go. Perhaps I shouldn't have shared that publicly, but a bit late now. Anyway, so now I'm on this screen. Now, if everybody's been able to get to that screen, that would be great. But let's see how you've got on. So if you've managed to see this screen, collaborators and teams, give us a green tick. Okay. Okay, right. If you do have a problem, let's know in the chat. Give us a red cross. I'm actually getting a little nervous. There's no red crosses. I don't know. That seems too good to be true. But okay, we'll keep going. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add people. So it says you haven't invited any collaborators yet, unsurprisingly. So what we'll do is we'll go to add people, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find my collaborator, right, which is rather confusingly named Mushroom Horse, okay, because it's not a real person, it's just my other account. And I'm going to click on that, but in your case, don't put in Mushroom Horse, put in who was in the second column next to your account username, okay? And then just type that in and you should hopefully see it appear, okay? This is the second possible sticking point of this session, but we'll see how it goes. And once you click on it, you should find you get something that looks like this. Now, if you've been able to do that, I'm just going to clear the feedback. If you've been able to do that, give us a green tick. Okay. Okay. Wow. Okay. Right. Okay. That's looking pretty good. I think. I think there are 16 people, but it looks like 14 of you have been able to do that. If you have a problem, please put it into the chat. Aman and Alex can help you, or let us know by putting a red cross. Okay. So once you see this with the person you've allocated, you've invited, or will invite, I should say, click add, and it will just say whatever their name is. Okay. Click that, and you should find you get a screen that looks like this, which is the same screen, but with the person's username here and pending invite here. Okay. Now, all of you, right, with your reviewer's hat on for a second, if you go to the email account which is associated with your GitHub account, you should find an invite. This is the other sticking point for this. Okay. Hopefully it may not arrive immediately. Okay. But you may have to wait a minute. Okay. But once you see that email pop up, feel free to follow the instructions, and you'll see a link. And click on that, and then you'll be able to accept. It. Okay. So I'm just going to do that now, and I should hopefully find. I go to my alternates. Here we go. So you should find an email. Steve Crouch invited you to Steve Crouch review example. So I'm going to view that invitation, and I'm going to, it says here, okay, all right, so you can review this information, and you should always do that. And then if you're happy, click accept invitation. Okay. You now have push access to the Steve Crouch review example repository. Okay, that's what you should see. You should be presented with the repository page there. If you've been able to get to that state, if you could give us a green tick, that would be really good. So if obviously you may need to wait a little bit for that email to show up. You may need to check your spam or junk folders. It may end up in there as well. Right. Looks like you're just about there. Okay. So this is good. We've created our PR, okay, and we've effectively invited someone else to review it. Okay. Right. And the key thing here is what we've done is we've also added one of our partner effectively as a collaborator to our repository. And now they're a collaborator on our repository, we can ask them to do all kinds of things, right? We can ask them, they don't have to do it, but we can ask them, right? So in order for that to happen, what we want to do is to add them as a reviewer to our pull request. So if I go back to my original repository with my creator's hat on, right, the person who's actually made these changes, if I go to the repository, click on pull requests, right? So go back to your own repositories now, right? Not your partner's repository. Click on your access your pull request by clicking on pull requests, and then select the pull request. There should be only one, and then click on reviewers, and then add in. You may even find it handily just gives you that option here, or you can type in their username. So not my case, yeah. And then select that username. You should see a little tick appear, and then click away, and you should find it comes up with something that looks like this. Now you should see an orange circle filled next to their name, indicating that you have requested their review and they have yet to submit that review. Okay, so it's currently in process. You've asked them to review it. Okay, we could add as many reviewers as we want if this were a particularly critical pull request with some sweeping changes or something. And you know, if it affected a lot of the code base, we had a big team, we'd probably want more than one set of eyes looking at this. Okay, in this case, it's a rather simple change. One person is more than enough, but we could add more if we wanted. So if you've been able to add a reviewer to your repository, please give us a green tick. That would be super great. Right. Again, if you have a problem, please feel free to put the problem in the chat. Right, I see someone's had an issue. Feel free to put your issue in the chat there, and we'll see what we can do to resolve it. Aman and Alex are standing by. Right. Okay. So we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay. So now that we've got to the point. So someone's mentioned they think they're waiting for the reviewer to accept. So it could be, yes, it could be that the emails got diverted to a spam or a junk folder. It could be the email hasn't been received in some way, or somehow got intercepted. If that does happen, you can go back to the original screen. So I will show you this actually, because this is useful. If you go back to the settings and go to collaborators, okay, you should still see pending invite there if they haven't accepted it. You can click on the bin icon, right, to remove them from the repository, the invite from the repository, and then recreate it, okay? And then go through that process again by going to add people, adding in their GitHub username, selecting them, going to add, and then it will send out another invite. So you may find that may fix it. GitHub inbox is the other one. Yes, you can go to you can go to your notifications here in the top right. So in this case, actually, it would be this one. And you may see an example here that says review. That asks you in that case, yes. It wouldn't say review request because that's what I've just done, but it would say you've been asked to join a repository. Yes, next to your display picture. You may find it's popped up there. Okay, right, that's a good point. Thank you, Starina. Yes, that's the other way you can do that. I find the email tends to be more reliable. The notifications don't always show up, at least for me. I don't always know why that is, but the emails oddly tend to be more reliable. Okay, all right. So we've got to this state. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually write a review of the pull request itself. So with our reviewer's hat on, if we go to our colleagues repository, so here we go. This is the repository that I'm going to review, which is of course my own, but I'm wearing my reviewer's hat on. I am Mushroom Horse going to review their code. Okay, so what I'll do is I will go to pull requests on their repository, click on the pull request. And again, as we've discussed, the other way to get there, if it does pop up for you, is to go to your notifications and click on the notification there that says review requested. But either way, we'll end up on this screen, which is the pull request. And it says, hey, add your review, right? Because you've been asked to review this, which is great. So if you get to this point, feel free to show us. Okay, give us a green tick. Let us know. Hang on, I'll just clear the feedback. Sorry, if you could do that again. If you could give us a green tick, that would be great. Here's another link that can show you all of the pull request reviews that have been requested of you. So that could be a useful shortcut. Okay, that's another way you might be able to find it. Okay. Right, so if you do have a problem, please give us a red cross and let us know in the chat if you're having issues there. Right. Okay, right. So now we've got here, what we need to do is we need to review the pull request. Okay, right. Oh, I think we've got a question in the chat there. So the question is, do I have to be a reviewer to review the pull request, or does that only affect whether I can close the PR or not? That's a very good question. If you've been added as a collaborator to the repository and you've been given push access, and I think that may give you enough permissions to be able to close the PR by merging it. I don't think it does by default, but it does depend how you're set up as a collaborator on the repository and the permissions you have. Okay. Right. The other thing is that yes, what you can request to review a pull request as well, the other way around. Someone had an issue, but they've managed to find it. Okay, good. Right. So this is going to present an overview of the pull request for us, including on separate tabs, the conversation, which is something we've already discussed, the commits to this particular branch, of which there's only one, right? Unsurprisingly, looks very familiar. The checks tab, and this tells us whether there are any automated checks implemented in GitHub Actions and their status. So if ever you've used continuous integration, that you can add in GitHub Actions to do various automated checks on the code to make sure that it's passing various code styling or other quality checks. You could check that here for this particular pull request. So it gives you some automated confidence that it's at a certain level of quality. The other one that's most important is files changed. And this gives a list of files and their line-by-line changes for this particular pull request. Right. So if we select the files changed tab now, or if you select add your review from the conversation page, which is the other way we can do it, because we know that this has popped up here, so we can just click that. Right, either way, it takes us to the same page. So, right, I'm just going to switch this back to a view that you may see. Okay. All right. So by default, the presented view indicates a unified view, and it shows deletions highlighted in red and additions highlighted in green. Right. So what we can do though is change it to what I prefer, which is called the split view. All right. So if we go to split, which is apply and then apply and reload that by clicking on the cog there and then clicking apply and reload. What it basically shows us is the older version of the change and the newer version, right, after we've done the change. And I find this a little more intuitive, and it's a little easier to see what's happened before as to the changes that are actually being made. But it depends what you might prefer as well. Right, okay, so, right. So when providing a review, so we have the option of adding comments or suggestions in line to the proposed changes. So if this were a really long set of changes, we could go through these line by line and file by file, and you can see that we have these plus points here that are added for each of the lines where we can actually add a comment or a suggestion to any particular change, or indeed anything within this within the files. So by hovering over a line and selecting the plus symbol at the start of the line, we're able to add a comment on that line. So if we spotted a spelling mistake or grammatical error elsewhere in the text, or in the case of code, a grammatic problem or other issue, we could just add these as and when we come across them. But also, most importantly, we can review the changes that we're supposed to be looking at too, right? And just checking that they all look reasonable. Right. So we have the option of adding a comment or suggestion here if we want to do that. Perhaps we know, for example, that this particular link, right, for which this points to, there's a Zenodo record or something for that, for the code, and we should be adding that in. So what we could do is for this particular line that's been added, we go, okay, that looks good. Okay, so that's a fine correction. So I'm going to put in good correction or good fix. And also going to mention something like we should also link to the Zenodo, because this has just occurred to me, right? And this is what happens in a real life project. Things occur to you and you feel you need to mention it, whilst when you're reviewing something, So I'm just going to add that in, and perhaps we already know what the URL is, and we'd add that in there for the Zenodo DOI link or something. And now once we've made that change, we can then click Start a Review. Okay, so once you've got to that point and you've clicked Start a Review, if you could give us a green tick box, that would be great, or a red if you haven't been able to get to that point. That would be absolutely interstellar. Thank you. Wow, it looks like some of you are having issues before have been able to catch up. So it looks like we have a question. Yes. So yes, please. What's the question? Oh, Aman, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it is for the question, Steve. So basically, I think
Yes.
someone was talking about the inline comments when there are changes. And I think it might be helpful to demonstrate how the UI works. But basically, I think Alex and I were talking about how you can make general comments, but you can't
Oh, sorry, you can't what, sorry?
sort of point to that line manually. So if you look at this review interface and you try to say add a line to another, if you try to add a comment to another line, which is not in a changed line, you
Oh,
won't be
yes.
able to do that probably? Or are you able to? Okay, you can. Right, so I think, wait, the hand raise might explain it better. Yeah.
Okay, hi, it's me, it's Gudrun. I did recently code review, but for unknown reason, I really couldn't put any comment on those lines that were not changed. Maybe that was code from another repo or so. So in the end, I used the solution you just suggested. I added the comment at the top near the viewed file, but I was really surprised that it didn't allow me to put a comment on it. So thank you.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, GitHub deals with a tremendous amount of complexity under the hood as to ownership, permissions, file locations, and it could be that there's some combination of permission access which is being denied to you for that reason. Perhaps your access rights to the repository. I don't know. That's a really interesting one. I'm going to need to follow that up because that sounds like a very interesting blocker for some people not being able to do that.
Also I can comment that, so the main contributor has his repo, yes, but he has also a copy on his fork, yeah, and maybe that came from his fork where I don't have access rights. Yeah, that's very odd.
That is an excellent example. I'm going to need to investigate that because that is a very valid thing to do. Because if it's come from their fork, of course, that's going to be filtered upstream to the original, and you'll be commenting on the PR that's been submitted to the original, but maybe you don't have the access to the original fork, and therefore it could be that. It could be that. I'm going to have to set that up and try it myself. That's a very interesting one. Aman makes a good point also. He's realized the GitHub UI is not always consistent in every interface, and I think also in every situation. But GitHub itself doesn't explicitly say why or why not. I think that's a very good point. Sometimes you may run into a block where it just doesn't work the way you expect, and that could be for any number of reasons. And that's where I think GitHub can be a little bit, can fall down a little bit. There are edge cases where things aren't always obvious as to what's happening, and it usually requires some Googling or someone else who's encountered that situation to find out what the issue is. Right. Yes. And also, Alex has mentioned it may also differ by organization. There are hierarchies of permissions that exist in GitHub from the organization to the individual accounts, which could be getting in the way of various actions being performed. And GitHub tries to do its best to ensure that only the right actions occur. But as we've already said, that may not always be obvious as to why that is happening. So I suspect the golden rule is check your permissions and where things are coming from as to whether you have permissions to be able to deal with those things and make those actions on those things. Yes, Aman says, yes, there's lots of access permissions and features that can be turned on and off at various levels, and it can be confusing. There are reasons for all of these, for this massive hierarchy, this matrix of permissions, but yes, it can be a little bit bewildering. And it's something you need to decide as a team, I think, as to the simplest but the proper approach that fits your project as to how and where you want to allow access for various things. And you can start at the basic level, as we have here, and add more restrictions later as you go on. But yes, it can be certainly the case it's not always obvious what's going on. Okay, that was a very interesting discussion. So yes, if you do run into a problem, let us know, because it's good to be able to tell people what kinds of problems they can run into. Right, okay, so now, after that rather invigorating conversation, what we'll do is we'll continue. So what we've done is we've basically got to this point where we've done our review. Now we could keep on adding more comments before we finish our review. If this were a much longer pull request with lots more files, lots more changes, we could go through and vet each of these in turn, make sure all looks good. If everything was fine, we may not even need to leave a comment, okay? But when it comes to the end of it, we've gone through it all, we've perhaps added comments, we'd like to finish our review. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to finish our review by clicking on the Finish Your Review button at the top here. Okay, and then I'm going to add a brief comment, which is overall changes look good. Although I'm going to add in the actual comment here. I don't need to do this, but I think I'm going to make the main point known here. Although we should consider adding that it's a Zenodo repo link. I'm duplicating my comment there, but if I had loads and loads and loads and loads of comments on here, I perhaps want to highlight the most important factor or theme throughout all of these comments at this level. Okay, just so it's easy to understand for someone when they're reading our review to see in summary what the key issue was. Okay, there's a common theme. Okay, and then we can select one of the following options. We can select comment, approve, or request. If we were to comment, then we're just leaving a comment and aren't requesting explicitly any changes, and it's up to the person who created it to take those comments on board however they wish. We could approve it, which means no comments or changes are necessary. They can just go ahead and merge it if they wish, or we could have request changes. Feedback must be addressed before it can be merged. Okay, so perhaps we found a blocker, some critical error that needs to be fixed. That's going to cause things to fall over. You know, that's when we're definitely wanting to use that issue. If we have some sort of level of perhaps medium level concerns that really should be addressed, maybe those are under comments, or if there's nothing really wrong, we can just approve it. Okay, but I'm just going to go for the first option, comment. Okay, and then I'm going to click on submit review. So if you've been able to get to the point where you have done that and submitted the review, if you give us a green tick, that would be really good. Thanks. So there's an interesting question we've been asked. Another way to run this training, for example, also would be for people to approve their own pull requests and to review them, effectively review their own pull request. But whilst you can approve a pull request and immediately merge it, GitHub does not allow you to do a review of your own PRs, right? And that's kind of because it goes against the reason behind them, which is to have others review your changes. And in a usual team environment, you'd ask a colleague to do a review. And yeah, if you're reviewing your own pull request, there's clearly some issue there, I would say, if you want to do that. But of course, you can submit comments to the pull request itself, right? And that's another way you can review your changes if you wish to do that, to make some notes perhaps. Okay, so we've got to the point now where we've created our PR, we've had someone else review it, and in turn we kind of reviewed someone else's. Now let's put our hats on as our code contributor, the one who's made the original change, and let's read the reviews, the review of our pull request and merge that pull request. So let's go back with our contributor hats on back to our repository, which we had before, right? Which we created. Click on our pull request, okay, and go into that. Then we should see that we've had our review looking something like this in the conversation, okay? So the review has occurred. We can see our overall comment that was made here, which is overall the changes look good. You should consider adding the Zenodo repo link. There's only one particular comment here, there could be many. And as we go through these, we can then amend. We could choose, for example, to fix this on this branch. We should do that. So we make a fix to this. We would then fix that on this branch. And then once we're happy with that, we would then resolve the conversation. So let's assume we've done that, resolve the conversation. Okay, so we resolved the issues. We're happy with the changes that we've made in response to the review. And then we can go ahead and merge it. So what we'll do is we'll do that now. We'll go ahead and merge the pull request into our code base by selecting merge pull request. And then we could change this if we want, but I'm going to keep it as it is just for brevity and click on confirm merge. Okay, we could add more into the extended description if we wished. Perhaps a summary of the changes that need to be made in response to the review might be an idea if it's a particularly large PR with a big review. But in either event, we end up just clicking on confirm merge. And once you've done that, it goes away and it goes, ta-da, you've now merged those changes into main based on the fact you've done this review. So it's been quality controlled in essence. Someone's checked it, evaluated it and said it's good. And it's been merged into main based on that review, okay? And it says here you've successfully merged and closed. And as we said before, branches on Git, if you can keep them short-lived, that's all the better, okay? We don't need this anymore for this particular example because it's just a small fix. So we can go ahead and delete that branch, okay? Okay, and that's it. So yeah, we've gone all the way through this process end to end. Thank you for sticking with me. You guys have been absolutely great. Let us know if you've been able to get all the way to the end by giving us a green tick. For those of you that have, if you have any other questions, we still have some time. So feel free to ask questions in the chat, or to you can raise your hand and we can go through questions that way if you have any. Right, that was a bit of an adventure, that one, I have to say. I hope that has been useful. But yes, if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. Someone didn't immediately delete the branch and can't now see how to do it. Yes, because now the pull request has been closed. But what you can do is you can go back to the pull request. There's a number of ways to do this. If you go to the pull request, click on the closed here, you will see there's no information lost. It's just in the closed state. And it might give you the option of deleting the branch within the pull request. Okay, that's one way of doing that. If you happen to remember the branch, you could click on the branches link on the front page and you'll see it here and you can delete it there. Okay, that's another way of doing it. Hopefully that answers that your question there, Anna. How does GitHub know the branch is related to the issue we initially opened? Well, it knows the commits are related to the issue we opened. Okay, so when we were doing the commit for this particular issue, GitHub's a little bit smart. So what we did is we added in the issue number, right, to the commit message. And because of that, when we made the commit and we pushed that to that branch, right, GitHub was able to line that commit up with that particular issue. So if you go back to your issue, which you will find is probably closed, depending on if you reference the issue. Indeed. So yes, Alex mentioned the notation is if you do the hash symbol and the issue number, then it will then basically associate that commit with that issue number. Okay. When you go to the issue, you will see a list of commits that have been made against that issue. Okay. So, a really good idea is to have meaningful commit messages. Yeah, this is a weird one. Yeah, Anna, you say mine didn't automatically close. I have seen this as well. Sometimes I have found my issues have been automatically closed and sometimes they don't. I do know that also, GitHub does take into account I think it takes into account the verbiage that you use, the words that you use. So if you say fix or fixes, Alex is saying this as well, then it will take that as, you fixed that issue, therefore I will close it. Okay, so it's making an assumption that by saying fix, you're fixing the issue. Okay, and that's what's happened in my case. So if you had something other than fix or fixes or something, I don't know, some word that meant the same thing, or I don't know, correcting the broken link article, perhaps it may not have resolved that issue for you. Thank you, Aman. Excellent. He's put in a link there for using keywords in issues and pull requests. So it gives you an idea there of how GitHub will react to each of those keywords in your commit messages and pull requests. Okay, so yeah, I think the same thing's also happening with the pull request as well, since I pretty much copied over the same language into the pull request summary fix here. So it's possible that that's also being picked up there. But GitHub's doing some work behind the scenes. Okay, good question. All right, good questions generally. Right. So let's see. We have a few minutes left. If there are any other questions, I think we've been. Thanks also to Alex. Huge thanks to Alex and Aman for answering the other questions I haven't had time to get to. Right, Alex has importantly put a post-session survey into the chat there. It would be absolutely brilliant if you could fill that in for us, because this helps us to justify doing more of these in the future. And also we want to know genuinely what to improve, what you liked about the session today. So yes, if you do have time, please fill that in before you go, or perhaps later on today, but ideally before you go. Because I know how it is, you know, you get these surveys and it's very easy to forget to fill them in later. Right. Are there any further or final questions from anybody? No? Okay, right. So I'm going to hand back to Alex now. But if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the chat and I'll do what I can to answer them. Okay. Thanks, everybody. It's been good. It's been fun.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Steve, for that, and Aman as well, for actively helping in the chat. Yes, if you can spare 1 minute to fill in the survey, that would be much appreciated. Otherwise, hope to see you to one of the 2 remaining sessions tomorrow and the day after. Thanks very much, everyone.